It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when the face shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's good to be back here.
Good to see you back.
In the way of announcements, I think a lot of you are probably waiting for an update on Sierra Leone. And we are putting an update together in the form of a presentation and a slideshow. So just be patient with us. Lord willing, we plan on doing that next week, Wednesday, here at the meeting house. So, and that's at 7 in the evening. So if you all want to mark that down on your calendars next week, which would normally be corporate teaching, we're going to have that update on Sierra Leone, and we will have some Q&A time. So if you have questions, write them down, unless you have a good memory and you can remember them. And Lord willing, we'll bring you guys all an update. Looking forward to your questions and also doing the presentation. It was good to go, and it was good to come back. Really glad to be back home and see all of your faces again. So, were there any other things that needed to be announced before Brother Ben comes up here?
There'll be some open mic time on Sunday.
Okay, so this Sunday there'll be some open mic time. So if the Lord has pressed something on your heart, come up here and share. I know I've had a few brothers come up to me, over the last few weeks, months, and shared some testimonies with me, and I've told you that you should share that with the church. Amen. So here's your chance. If you don't share, you're really. And what the other thing that sharing a testimony does is it reinforces it in our own hearts. So I want to definitely encourage that. If you're one of those brothers, or if God has moved and done something for you, come up here and share it. It's just like you were blessed, somebody else will be too. And it'll bless you and share. It'll bless yourself in sharing it. So if there's nothing else, then Brother Ben, I'll give the time over to you.
I would like to begin this evening with a verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. First Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12. where Paul writes, all things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Now, I've heard this verse used many times over the years, and usually it's applied to the first part of the verse. And tonight we want to look in particular at the last part of this verse, where it says that all things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. We know that the enemy is busy trying to seduce the church and bring us under his power, under the influence of the world. And over the centuries, the church has been fighting this battle of trying to stay free, to serve God, and away from the encumbrances that come from the enemy. And so tonight, want to take in particular a look at one way that the enemy has been attacking the church recently in the last 10, 15, 20 years. It's a very recent phenomenon, and that is the power of technology. There is a power that we're seeing that is seducing people in the church across the world in many different church settings in many different countries, regardless whether they're poor, rich, whether they're modern or third world. We're seeing how technology is seducing people and bringing them under its power. And so we want to look at that this evening because it's something that, a couple of years ago, I worked for a publishing company. One of the things that we do is we publish materials for homeschoolers, and we also provide services for homeschoolers. And so whenever we're trying to make decisions about what to cover for homeschoolers at our homeschool conferences, we're looking at what are the needs of the people. And one of the things that we noticed is that homeschoolers are really struggling with what to do with technology in their home. It's a real issue. It's something that's new. It's something that's powerful. It's something that relates to education. You can get many different courses and learn them online, or you can get ebooks. And so we get a lot of questions. What is the right way to raise a child? What is the right way to deal with technology in the home? And so we had a conference last year that addressed this topic. And it's a sensitive topic because churches have different values and applications when it comes to technology. Families have different ways of applying technology, probably right here in this setting. People have many different ways that they use technology in the home. But we found that there was a tremendous amount of interest from people on this subject. And the reason is because it is a real challenge. And so I'm happy for you. And you may think, well, why are you happy for me whenever we're dealing with this challenge? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I remember years ago when we had teenagers and this technology was coming in, and we were very much in the dark. We really had no one that had walked before us to work through these issues. And so now there are a few people that have made some mistakes already, and now you can learn from them. And so if you are a young father sitting here today, you're at a good place because you can learn from the mistakes that I have made and other men have made, and you can apply them to your home today. I want to say right up front that I am not against technology. Like I said, I work for a publishing company, and if you would look at my desk, you would see right in front, right in the center of my desk is a keyboard and a monitor. And I've been working with a computer for many years. And if it wasn't for technology and the ability to email and do research online, etc., I probably couldn't do the things that I do. I actually work from home. But technology allows me to do this. But I have found that even though technology has been very helpful, technology does come with many hidden dangers. And this evening, I'd love to expose and uncover those dangers. This is not a talk to try and discard technology, but rather it is a talk to help us to adjust properly to technology. My goal is not for you to leave here discouraged, but rather for you to see a path forward with hope and an understanding of how you can move forward. I'm going to be sharing some things that might be new to you, and some things that I have learned. But I do want to confess and say that I'm still learning myself. I don't know. I know very little on this subject compared to other people, and this is something that is so broad and covers so many areas of our life that it's good to get wisdom and information from a variety of people so you can make the best decisions in your life. So in 1 Corinthians, we were reading about how all things are lawful, but not all things are profitable, and that even if something is profitable, even if something is lawful, in other words, doing it itself is not sin, it can still captivate us to the point where it masters us. In the King James Version, it talks about we should not be brought under the power of anything. NASB says that he doesn't, Paul says he doesn't want to be mastered by anything. ESV says he doesn't want to be dominated by anything. And it makes me think about our daughter whenever she had many surgeries years ago, and serious surgeries on her feet. And I found out that they were giving her morphine. And I was a little bit alarmed. I thought, morphine, like this is addictive. This is like heroin connected. And what's going to happen? He said, oh, it's fine. We'll just give it to her now to deal with the pain. And as soon as possible, we'll discontinue. And that will be it. She'll probably never notice it in her life. And that's the way it worked. But then I had a coworker years ago in Virginia who had back surgery. And the doctor gave him a prescription for very strong pain medication for his back. Well, he was not a Christian at the time, and he became addicted to those pain medications. And so my daughter was using a pain medication, but it did not master her. It did not control her life. But then I had a friend who got to the point where he used a pain medication and it started to master him. He was a slave to that thing. And he then had to find other ways to find drugs to take care of his addiction after the doctor no longer gave him the pain meds. Well, that was expensive. Buying drugs is expensive. So what did he do? He had to start stealing. And he had a job where he could manipulate the invoices and different things. So he started stealing from his boss until one day his boss found out. He lost his job. He was charged. He had to go to court. And but through that, he became a Christian. So those are two examples of the same thing, pain medication. For one, it was profitable, and for the other, it was unprofitable. For one, its use, they were free, and the other, they were dominated and brought under its power. And to me, that's an illustration of what can happen with technology today. And actually right here, the people that are listening to this talk here this evening, there are probably people that are using technology but are free. If they want to spend all evening with their family or all weekend working outside, they can do that. And there might be people listening that are not free. They cannot spend a whole weekend with other people or doing things in the yard, the kind of things that would normally be done by their grandparents years ago, without getting their fix, without going to social media, without going to play a video game, without looking at pornography, without spending some time on YouTube. That is how this technology works. And so we want to look at, this evening, we want to look at how technology actually works to arrest us, to captivate us, and bring us to the point where we are actually addicted. And then we also want to talk about ways that we can become free. And we also want to talk about ways how we can prevent our children from becoming addicted and controlled by this media. One of the things that came up in the discussion years ago, I remember when we were living in Virginia, and that was when the internet came out. And there were big discussions in the church about what to do about the internet. And you know what was our biggest concern at that time? It was pictures. It was the content. And so there was all this discussion about how are we going to keep people especially young people from stumbling into bad content, bad pictures and videos and things like that. And it was a valid concern. But now, after about 10 to 20 years of using this technology, we're realizing that the concern that we should have, that we have with technology, is much, much more than the content. We're seeing now that technology has a way of interacting with people and changing a person's behavior and even physically changing their brain. So that just the interaction with this technology, even if it does not involve sin or immoral material, brings a person to the point where they become in bondage and addicted. It alters their brain, it alters their behavior, it alters their relationships, it can even alter your sense of reality. If you think about it, why were all those riots happening a couple of years ago in the United States concerning Black Lives Matter? So much of that just did not make sense until you started hearing what these people were seeing and following on Facebook. You know, studies have shown that I'm kind of running ahead of myself here a little bit, but when it comes to social media, for example, untruths and lies travel 6 times faster than truth. They can track all these things with computers. And so someone can be sitting at Facebook and they can go in there and they can create a fake account and they can say, let's make something up and use our computers to track what happens. How many times it's shared, how many times people go thumbs up, hearts, all these different things. And so they make up some grand lie and they put it out there. And then they put out something that's true and they track both lines of information. And the falsehood and the lie travel 6 times faster from person to person. Hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? Than the truth. So you see how the lies are traveling 6 times faster. You see how that can distort our sense of reality if we are not discerning and we're not careful. So I wish I had the ability here to show you something, but a couple of years ago, I came across some brain scans, and you can find these yourself if you want to. There are a couple of ministries. One is called Amen Clinics. Another is called Conquer Series. You might have heard that. That is a ministry to help men dealing with pornography. And Conquer Series website, they have a series of brain scans where first they show a brain scan of a healthy individual. And it looks smooth on the outside and has a few wavy lines and dimples in there, but there are no holes, no crevices, no cracks. Then it shows the brain scan of a heroin addict, someone that has been on heroin for many years. And you actually see, it looks like spots that have been hollowed out with a spoon, entire spots that are dark. And then is a third brain scan, and it shows the brain of someone that has been addicted to pornography. And the brain actually looks worse than the brain scan of the person that is addicted to heroin. It has dark spots and spots that are hollowed out, looks like been taken out with a spoon. That is an illustration of the damaging effects of this type of material. Now, you may say, well, okay, this is because it's bad content. True. But you can also take brain scans. They have done brain scans now of people that have used Facebook a lot. And they compare the brain scans of girls that have used Facebook a lot. And they compare that with the scans of girls that don't use Facebook at all. And there's actually a difference in the gray matter size in their brain. It actually alters the growth of the brain. We'll talk about that some more. The way it works is that the brain is connected to our body in many ways and communicates with our body through different hormones. And there's one hormone in particular that is very important when it comes to these types of addictive behavior, and that is dopamine. You might have heard of dopamine. Raise your hand if you've heard of dopamine. All right, so many of you are familiar with this. And so all of us experience dopamine. If you had supper today, you received a little bit of dopamine, and that's a pleasure response and you feel better. If you then had a dessert, that gives a bigger shot of dopamine. Sugar gives a bigger shot of dopamine than mashed potatoes. So all of these things are just part of life, and we are designed to, our brain produces dopamine, and we experience the dopamine, and we like this, and we are in this cycle. On we go. But there are things that are happening with technology where the release of dopamine is abnormal. Dopamine is being released in ways that are just unreal. And so when our body, our brain receives this big shot of dopamine, it says, whoa, this is too much. And so what happens is the receptors in the brain, they actually shut down. They produce a wall or a barrier so that they don't get damaged and there isn't too much dopamine. Okay? And so let's say somebody goes and they play a video game, and it's a very intense video game. Or let's say someone that has never ever watched a movie, and they go sit down and they watch a movie that is full of action and violence. They will get a tremendous shot of dopamine because it's very stimulating and exciting. And so the receptors say, whoa, this is too much, and it puts up a barrier. Well, if you walk away from that and you shake and you say, oh, that was no good, and leave it alone and go on with life and just eating mashed potatoes and a little bit of dessert every once in a while, you'll be okay. But if you go back again the next day and do something similar to get another shot of dopamine, then your body is going to receive that. Your brain will receive the dopamine, and it will say, here, the guard is here. We're going to protect you. And after doing this for several days, you'll notice that you don't get the same sensation that you did before. And so now you have to do something that is even more stimulating than what you did before. And that is why drug addicts, they start off with something like marijuana, and then eventually they go to a harder drug, and then eventually they're going to a later drug. It's because in their brain, the receptors are shutting down, and they're always having to go to a stronger and stronger thrill in order to get that joy and sensation that they were getting at first. That same mechanism that works with, that happens in the brain of a drug addict is what happens in anyone's brain that is using technology to stimulate their emotions. And it doesn't matter if it's social media or games or YouTube or movies. All of these things will stimulate the brain in a way that is abnormal. It used to not be so much this way 20 years ago, because you remember those old CRT monitors that were like this, black and white, and everything was kind of fuzzy, and after a while your eyes got tired and you shut it down and you just walked away and you were glad to be away. But now you can go, and for a few $100s, you can get a very nice big large screen that puts out everything in a high resolution. Is just tremendous. And the higher the resolution, the more color, the more stimulating, the more dopamine release. It's been proven and shown over and over again. And so what happens then to addicts is, with time, they create this little, almost like a creature within them that has this craving that has to be satisfied. Addicts have actually created an internal parasite which feeds on an outside source. A cocaine addict brings that outside source in through the bloodstream. So they get a needle and they put it through the bloodstream. For an alcoholic, it's through the mouth. But for someone that does it with media, it's through the eyes and the ears. The symptoms of this are brain fog, reduced functions of the brain, being easily bored, being detached. And then if this continues on and a person goes on in their addictions, then you get anxiety and depression. These are all symptoms that come with these kinds of addictions. And the first one I'd like to talk about is social media. Social media is something that has crept up on us. It's something that for me, it took a long time to try and understand and why it was something that was dangerous. My first exposure with social media was years ago. I was in traveling through through Canada, and I had a layover in Toronto. And I decided I had enough time. I would go get something to eat. And while I was in the line, I noticed there was this large group of 8th grade girls that were coming in, and they were going to get food there in the food court as well. Well, I used to teach 8th grade girls. And here comes this large group, like 15, 20 8th grade girls. They all had the same colored jerseys on. So I figured they're part of a sports team. This is going to be an interesting meal, because I know how lively and whatever girls like this could be. Well, I got my food and I sat down at the edge of the food court and started eating and waiting for the entertainment to begin. Boy, was I surprised. I look up and it's quiet. That's because the girls are sitting down and eating and pulling out their phones. And they're checking their email, they're checking their whatever, their social media accounts. They're taking pictures of one another, sending selfies, showing each other things on their phones, taking pictures of the food, sending that to their friends. That's what they were doing. There were a couple of girls paired off that were visiting, but for the most part, all of them were connected to their phones. They were communicating and relating with their phones and not with one another. I had never seen anything like this. And I knew then that this is something strange and different. And I just left scratching my head. I just didn't understand what that was all about. Well, since then, social psychologists and different men have studied this, men and women, they have studied this, and they're saying that there's a huge phenomenon of social media affecting girls, particularly girls, and it's really hurting them a lot. One of the writers that has written about this, his name is Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. He's a social psychologist. He talks about how there's a gigantic increase in depression and suicide in girls starting in about 2010. Why 2010? That's about the time middle school students began using social media. Teen girls hospitalized because they cut themselves went up 62% in older teen girls. It hurt them, but then the younger ones that are young and preteen girls are even more vulnerable. Among them, the rate of them cutting themselves and having to be hospitalized went up 189%. Suicide among girls 15 to 19-year-old is up 70%. 10 to 14-year-olds, it's up 151%. This is the first generation to grow up on social media for middle school. They're more depressed, they're more frightened, and they're afraid to take risks. Rates of getting a driver's license or going on a date are dropping. Because of all the paranoia and anxiety, they don't want to take risks. I have relatives that got married and they were in their 20s and neither one of them had a driver's license. I couldn't understand it. They had a job nearby, they could just walk there and they wouldn't go and get a driver's license. So anytime they wanted to go anywhere, they had to get someone to take them around. I cannot fathom that. But this is what happens when people get to the point where the anxiety level gets so high that they feel like they cannot function in regular life. Now, I was talking about social media. So what is social media? Social media is a software, a platform that is used on devices like phones and iPads and laptops, and it's used to interact between people. Most popular today are Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and there are others. There are also some other platforms that are also considered social media. You may not be aware of this, but YouTube is also considered somewhat social media because you can take a video, post it up, and share that information with other people. WhatsApp is actually considered a mild form of social media, as well as Telegram, and then there are others like Pinterest. Now, usually when people talk about social media and they think about social media, they think, well, what's really wrong with social media? We're just communicating one-on-one and using a screen instead of a paper or a telephone. Well, that's just the thing. you actually are not communicating one-on-one when you are using social media. When Facebook was first developed many years ago, they just wanted to make a platform where people communicate with one another. It was some college boys, and they had some ideas, and they put something together. But like it often goes, very often then a company gets involved, they buy the technology, and they say, how can we make money? And so they decided then that they were going to hire some people to help them learn how to make money with platforms like Facebook. And they came down to a game plan, and that was that let's figure out how to get as much of the person's attention as we can. How much of your life will you give us? Because if you're on our platform, we can sell advertising. And with advertising, we can make money. And so what they did is they turned to behavior experts. Tristan Harris, I'll mention him later on. He used to work for Facebook, but he quit whenever he saw how Facebook was developing harmful tactics. He said Facebook began to work with specialists in human behavior to link technology and psychology. And so they're starting to link psychology is understanding how the person behaves, and technology. And they're linking the two together to try and figure out, how can I get you to go on Facebook and stay on Facebook as long as possible? And they decided the way to do that was with algorithms. I don't know if you know what an algorithm is. It's based, if you went to school and had algebra 1 and algebra 2, you have these long formulas. Well, just imagine long formulas that, if they were on a sheet of paper, would run from the front of this room to the back and many layers deep. And this is just a code that is used with a computer to figure out big, deep problems. And these algorithms are designed so that once they're punched into a computer, all the person has to do is put in the criteria, and the algorithm will figure out the problem. And so it's with algorithms that the computer Deep Blue was able to defeat Garry Kasparov. He was the top chess player in the world. I think it was back in the 80s. A computer, an IBM computer, actually beat the best chess player in the world. And it was with algorithms. The computer itself had to play many people over and over and over, and the computer taught itself how to win. Do you understand that? You see, in order to beat the best chess player in the world, you can't tell the computer how to do that. No one's smart enough. So the computer itself actually has to figure out how to beat the best chess player in the world. And it did. That was in the 80s. The computer that did that and beat Gary was huge. It weighed like half a ton, and I mean, it was huge. It took a forklift to move it around. The smartphone that you carried in here today is more powerful than that computer. Now, these companies that have these algorithms that are crunching away for Facebook, they're far more powerful than what you have in your pocket. They're so powerful that they generate so much heat, they actually put these servers and computers in these capsules and put them underwater to cool them down. Tremendously powerful machines. And so all these algorithms are working out there, and they are tracking every single user of Facebook. And not only are they tracking what you're doing, these algorithms are also being told how to get you to come back over and over again and to stay on their platform. Did you know that Facebook pushes likes? You know what likes are? So you post something and then somebody sees it and says, oh, I like that. And most people, they think that, oh, I got the like, and so that like must have been given by that person like 15 seconds ago, right? That's not how it works. See, Facebook, they learned that if a girl bakes a chocolate cake, let's say, and for her brother, birthday cake, and then posts that thing online, what's she going to do later on in the evening? She's going to go check to see if any of her friends said anything about it, right? Now, what if all of her friends responded that evening? Oh, that's a wonderful cake, and I love the colors and all these different things. The girl goes to bed very satisfied, turns off her phone, and goes to sleep. But what if only one girl responds? What's she going to do? She's going to wonder, why didn't anybody else say anything? And what is she going to do? She'll go back and check. And she'll check again. And then 2 hours later, oh, yeah, Rebecca said something. Oh, now it's 11 o'clock. It's late. I need to go to bed. Next morning, she checks her phone again. You know why that's happening? Because Facebook has learned to stretch out those likes. They purposely withhold them to stretch out the amount of time that a person's going to go and check their status. I don't use Facebook. I don't understand how it all works, and I might be using some of the wrong terminology here, but I do use WhatsApp, and I find it very interesting how that all works. How this psychology, we post something, and then if nobody says anything, like on my family chat, if I post something and nobody says anything, then it's like, well, did I not say it clearly enough, or did people not like it, or what's wrong? Is everybody that busy today? And that's for a man that's over 50 years old. And I'm the grandpa of the family. And imagine if you have a 16-year-old that is not converted or maybe barely converted and feels insecure. And so these algorithms are working in the background, working very hard to keep you attached. And eventually, these algorithms have figured out many different things about you. They know when people are lonely or depressed, or when you're looking at photos of your ex-girlfriend. And eventually, they even know your personality type. Did you know that if you go to Google and ask a question, the results of that Google search will vary depending on where you live? It's all changed depending on what they think you want to see. Then the algorithms, they try to find rabbit holes. Have you ever gone to YouTube and noticed that they have just figured out exactly what you want to look at? It takes a little while, but they find out what are your interests, what are your hobbies, what kind of things do you like to watch or listen to, and those are the things that they suggest. You can see evidence of that in my home. You go to my laptop and you'll see things there about maybe preaching sermon or something about geography or history. I love history, and we have a market garden, so you might see something there about getting a family computer, and you go to YouTube and you see things like crocheting and cats and dogs, because our daughter uses that computer. That's just the way it is. This is all designed to get us into these rabbit holes, and so where we stay. So we develop an unconscious habit. Tristan Harris says that opening an app, a social media app, is like playing a slot machine to see what you got. Have you ever noticed that can even happen with WhatsApp? What's on here? What do we have for statuses today? And so what happens is we get this feedback loop where we get a little bit of a dopamine shot, and we go back over and over again. And you may say, what is wrong with that, Brother Ben? You said that we get dopamine with food. That's true. But do you eat dessert every 30 minutes? I hope not. You see, we eat, and then we wait a while. Then we eat, and we wait a while. We were not created to have social approval every 5 minutes with hearts and likes and thumbs up. We were not created to go to a news app 30 times a day to see the latest information about the pandemic or the prime minister or what's happening in the Ukraine. If we aren't careful, technology can become a digital pacifier for a person when they are lonely or afraid. And that is the vulnerable part. This technology, it gets to know us, and then we find that whenever we are lonely, afraid, a little discouraged about something, we can go to this technology as a soother to comfort us. And the technology is actually something that is learning how to do that. Interesting quote here. There are only two industries that call their customers users: illegal drugs and software. I'd like to talk a little bit now. I was talking about these different platforms. There's one platform that has come out just recently, since the last time I gave this talk, that has become very, very powerful, and that is TikTok. I don't know if you're acquainted with TikTok. There's a lot of concern in the United States and Canada about China's involvement with TikTok and security and so forth. That is not the biggest concern that we should have as Christians for TikTok. I noticed a while back, I was on YouTube, and there was this new thing called YouTube Shorts. Raise your hand if you're familiar with YouTube Shorts. Okay, there you go. I said, what is this? And so I clicked on one of these links, and I watched this. It was very short, and then it went on to something else, and then it went on to something else, and then something else. And after about 4 or 5 minutes of this, I stopped. And I noticed that my brain actually had an ache. I thought, what is this? This was very strange. I just went on, and then I found out about TikTok, and I did some research. There's a lot of concerns about TikTok. And then I remembered whenever I went to YouTube Shorts and experienced YouTube Shorts, how I felt when I was done using it. They say that TikTok is extremely dangerous for the brain and for our dopamine receptors because they're so short. I don't know, what is the maximum length of a TikTok video, I think is about 3 minutes, something like that. I think, I'm not sure. But the average length for a TikTok video that young people actually consume is around 14, 15 seconds, I think. They just move on from one to another, to another, to another. And so the developers or the people that are putting the videos up, they've learned to make them very short. And so they're very intense, interesting, so, well, I mean, in the eyes of the beholder, and they move rapidly from one thing to another. And the clinical psychologists are saying because every TikTok video has a different frame of reference, it releases a lot of stimulation. And so you can be on one and it shows somebody catching a big fish, and then it goes over here and it shows a dog jumping off a balcony, and then you go to the next one and two cars collide and flip over, like very high interest, and it moves from one thing to another very rapidly. And so our brain is over, and that just produces a tremendous amount of hormones in the brain. It's extremely addictive. I was visiting with a former high school student a while back, and I visited with him for about half an hour about technology in school, and I asked him questions. What are young people doing, and what's going on, and what, Facebook's? And he said, well, it's not so much Facebook anymore. It's going on to Snapchat. And I said, so what's happening in classroom? Are they there playing video games? What are the guys doing? He said, well, the teacher gives the lecture and the assignment, and then everyone's supposed to do their assignment. But, a lot of them, they pull out their phones and then they're on TikTok. I said, TikTok. That's right. TikTok and not other things. He said, that's right, TikTok. I said, during class? Yeah, they're supposed to be doing their work. That's right. Like the one or two boys, or like how many? Oh, no, at least the fourth of the guys, they're on TikTok instead of doing the work. I have a friend that's a school teacher in public school in Texas, and I asked him about 6 years ago, what's it like in your classroom? And he was teaching junior high at the time. And he said and he did not allow phones. Well, I don't think he did. He didn't allow phones and iPads in the classroom. But he said about 10% of my students are zoned out. Like you can't even connect with them in the classroom. And that's because of things like the gaming and the TikTok and all these different things. Stay away from YouTube Shorts and TikTok. It's very dangerous. I'd like to talk about another thing that can captivate us and get us harnessed in, and that is computer games. We can have this concept where we think that if we are just doing wholesome things with our computer, that it's not damaging. We had taken that approach ourselves years ago, and I wish I could turn back time and change some of the things that we did. But that is actually not true. The damage that comes to our psyche is more than just the evil content. We can think that, well, I'm not playing like poker games and doing online gambling and things like that, and so therefore it won't be addictive to me. But what is actually happening is that your brain cannot discern whether or not you playing poker, winning money, losing money, or whether you're playing an exciting video game where you have all these different levels and achievements and things to do in order to win. Your brain doesn't know the difference. Actually, I would say that today, most video games are probably releasing more dopamine than the poker player that was playing poker 50 years ago. Okay, he would get a little shot every once in a while whenever he won a hand, lost a hand, maybe when he's looking at his next card. Video games are extremely, extremely addictive. Not only that, I mean, we just see the phenomenon, what's happening with young men all over the world, playing late into the night, addicted excessively. It's not about the money, winning money or losing money. It's about the drama. It's about the achievement. It's about the novelty. And so the more a game has drama and the more achievements there are, and the more novelty there is, the more you'll be addicted. I can actually tell you about my experience. Years ago, I don't even know how this started, but I like strategy games. I've always liked strategy games, a board game, strategy game. I enjoy that. And I came across this numbers game on the computer. I started by playing chess. I really enjoyed playing chess on the computer. I didn't play it online with other people, but I played it on the computer, and I enjoyed it sometimes. Stress relief, you see there. And then I found a game. It was a strategy game involving numbers, and I thought, this is innocent, right? No shooting here, no video. It wasn't like video, and so I played. But see, it had different levels, and the more I win, the more things I could unlock, and the more things I unlock, the better I got, and the more better I got, the new things in the game I experienced. And with time, I was spending more and more time on this game. And what I didn't know is that the enemy was actually setting me up, because I was developing a bad habit. Whenever I was experiencing, let's say, a bad day, instead of spending more time in prayer with God's word, see, I was going to this for stress relief. And then the time came when I went through a very difficult time in life. And you know what happened? The enemy had me. And I didn't understand what was happening. I don't know if any of you play computer games at all, if you've done that, or whether you spend time on social media. But one thing happens. You can play and suddenly you look at the clock and you think, where did all that time go? And no idea. It just disappeared. And if you're a father, that is not a very good thing. And so this was happening to me. And I could have shown you what I had on the screen, and it would not have seemed evil, but yet it was addictive because it was drawing me in when I was vulnerable. Eventually, I got to the point where I realized what was going on. My wife was talking to me about how I wasn't spending enough time with the family, which is a very shameful thing to have to happen, but I'm so thankful she did. And it took a while. The Lord spoke to me about this, and I realized this thing it's got a hook in me. And so I realized I had to drop it entirely, and I did. I used to have a game on my phone, which I would sometimes play whenever I was flying. I really don't enjoy flying, and I have to fly a few times a year for my work. And if I'm crammed up here in between people, I would take out my phone as a distraction while I'm flying through the air. I took that off. I can pray. I can have something to read, or I can visit with a person beside me. I don't need this thing. But that is my experience. And I can tell you that technology led me down a path that I had no idea would take me. And if there's anyone here today that can relate to what I just described, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to take this seriously and not get discouraged, and find a way to really see reality. Talk to your wife. If you have teens, talk to your teens, talk to your friends, talk to your pastor, and most of all, talk to God. This is between you and God. He's the one that can deliver you from any bondage you may have. He's the one that can show you whether or not you are really free in using technology properly. See, I had a false sense of security and safety. I'm not doing the things that other people are doing, so therefore I'm okay. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not playing these terrible shoot 'em video games, but yet I was in a place where I was vulnerable. Just like an army that changes its diet from meat and potatoes to soda pop and chips, we can become weakened in our spiritual life and set up for disaster whenever the hard times come. So we have to learn how to manage this thing, this technology. It's something new for us. And how are we going to manage it? Well, one of the things we have to do is remember the words of Jesus, where he said in Matthew 18, "If thine eye offend thee, pluck it out." And I think a key word here is offend. And so when it comes to technology, or a book that you might be reading, or a job that you have, or whatever it might be, you have to evaluate, is this offending me? Is this causing me to stumble? Is this making me weaker? Is this leading me into temptation? We pray, Lord, lead us not into temptation. How can we pray that prayer if we are actually engaging in things that lead us into temptation? I remember years ago when I was working on the farm as a teenager, we had some young men that came, and they came from Mexico. They were working for us. And I guess where they came from, they didn't have much money and they didn't have access to a lot of different foods. And I noticed that there was a tendency with these fellows when they would come. It was hot there in West Texas, and so we would always have something to drink, a big jug of water. That's what we had. But these fellows, they didn't come with a jug of water. They came with pop, Coke. That was the favorite. And they would drink Coke. And I would tell them, that sugar's no good for you in this heat. Oh, no, it's fine. Nothing wrong with it, I remember one fellow, his name was Henry. I said, Henry, why don't you go, why don't you drink water? He said, well, I don't have a jug. And I don't want to put it all in a gallon jug. It'll be warm. I said, just go buy a jug at Walmart. It won't cost you very much. It's the same price as a 6-pack of Coke. Well, I don't have money for that either. I need the money to buy the Coke. That was his answer. But every one of those men, after they'd worked for us for a while, their diet of drink, it changed over. They might have a soda with their meal, but they weren't constantly guzzling Coke all the time. Because when we go out and work in the heat, I could outperform them. Why? Because they were on sugar, and that sugar was destroying them. Why am I telling you this little anecdote? It's because it's not that they didn't care about their bodies or that they didn't care about what they ate. They just weren't familiar with all the sugar. They never had this at their fingertips. And so they had to learn how to deal with it. And that's what we have to do now too. We have to learn how to deal and how to manage this technology. That's the key. And so the best thing for us to do is to understand how it works and the dangers that are there, and then make the right decisions. You know, we don't allow our children to eat as many cookies as they want. We know already that you don't let your children eat cookies 20 minutes before supper, right? How do you know that? Your parents taught you that, right? We have generations of teaching about how to use food. We don't have that when it comes to technology. And so how do we apply this technology? I'd like to talk a little bit about children then, how to raise children in the world of technology. There's a very important study that came out a while ago. It said preschoolers who use screen-based media for more than 1 hour each day have been shown to have significantly less development in core brain regions involved in language and literacy. Brain scans indicate that the more time spent on screens, the lower the child's language skills and less structural integrity in key brain areas responsible for language. You can literally see the difference on brain scans. You can see it. Now, some people might say, now, wait a second. I read a study a while back that if a child learns with technology, they actually gather the information quicker. They can get it quicker. Well, maybe on the short term, but not on the long term. See, I could probably find a study that would say if a high school student doing Algebra 1 drinks a Red Bull, they can do their math faster. You think I could find a study that would say that? I probably could. All right. So does that mean you should give your high school student a Red Bull every day? It's math. Here it is. Drink your Red Bull. No. It'd be damaging. In the long run, it would be damaging. My recommendation when it comes to technology and preschoolers is zero. Zero. And it's so sad to go to someone's home and see that the smartphone is used as a babysitter. We were in a home a couple of years ago, and the mother wanted to visit with my wife, and the phone went over to the little 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old was there, 3 or 4-year-old, just busy. This video, that video. Oh, the videos were harmless, right? But I don't think it was accident that their older children, their boys, were rebels. They did not have the hearts of those children. They were too careless and they knew it, and they had to change the way they parented. Too many parents are using media now, the phones and iPads and things like that as babysitters. Some of our school reps are actually traveling from school to school and realizing now that a lot of preschoolers are coming into schools now, and they're having a tremendous difficult time with learning to read. And it makes a person wonder why. Is it because of what they're eating? They're not sleeping? Or are they on the screen far too much? Best thing to do is just zero screen time before preschool. And then whenever you do introduce technology, do it intentionally. You make the decision. You know, my dad is the one that decided when and where I was going to start driving a pickup. And he didn't just give me the keys and say, here you go, Benny, and there's 160 acres, have fun. No, he didn't do that. He said, I want you to take the pickup and I want you to drive over here and drive over to that pivot. And then I'm going to come up over there and I'm going to join you there. So the first time I drove a pickup was supervised, and it was on the farm, and it had to do with work. And so later on, when I was older and I took the pickup to town, I was actually driving a work pickup. It wasn't for entertainment. And that's what we should do for our children as well. We are to be masters over technology. And that means we use technology as a tool and not as a toy. So introduce technology as a tool. Start off with learning how to type or to write a short story or an essay or do spreadsheets, things like that. Not social media and videos and games. If it's going to be social media and videos and games, then the introduction is toy, not tool. Also, as a child is growing up through the elementary years and middle school years, it's good to limit it as much as possible, and especially be careful about any social media. In our brotherhood, we have some agreements that we have as far as social media with our young people, and I'm so thankful for them. Um, I think there's a difference between somebody in authority telling everybody what to do, and a group of men getting together and saying, we got a problem here. What's the best way we can solve this? Right? And I think sometimes it's good with something like technology if we get together and we have some understanding of how we're going to deal with this thing. Because the reality is, young people get together and they influence one another. And they want to connect and they want to do things together. And it's really good if we can have a game plan where we're all on the same page. It's so disappointing. I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you or not. It's so disappointing to have your young people come home from someone else's home and you hear what happened there. It's so sad, right? It shouldn't have to be that way. But if we work together, we can avoid those kinds of things. Another thing we can do for children is to make sure that we give them an environment that is conducive for them to stay away from these things. In studying the dopamine that affects people, one of the things that scientists have done is they have rigged all these sensors with rats and then put them inside a cage, given them a lever where they could hit the lever and get a shot of dopamine. And they find out that, they give a shot of cocaine, which gives them a shot of dopamine. And they have found that they can make rats addicted to cocaine. And the rat is there just hitting the lever. Eventually, after days, he's hitting the lever over and over again, just trying to get as much cocaine he can, and will stop eating and dies. But you know what I found out? I found this interesting study. You can't get rats addicted to cocaine if they live in their natural environment. So the only way you can get a rat addicted to cocaine if you put him in a cage. If he's out there running around the grass and the trees and eating seeds and enjoying the sun and the wind, he'll leave the cocaine alone. And I think that gives us a little bit of clue how we should raise our children, right? I wonder sometimes, are we maybe bringing things more challenging for our children because of the way we live? It used to be years ago, so many people, they had animals, they had yards. And I know it's difficult here in this area with land prices being so expensive, but I think sometimes we need to focus not only on limiting things, but also providing things for our children, an environment for our children that is conducive for them to find joy and happiness and exploration and excitement. What do you have in your yard? What do you have in your basement? Yeah. I go to some people's homes, and I have a brother-in-law, if he finds something secondhand, old, whatever, that he thinks will be interesting in his yard, he gets it and puts it up, spends all Saturday putting it up, and eventually he has a wonderful yard. The children love playing there. Then you go to the next place and it's barren, nothing there. It's almost sad. Children need a good, healthy environment where they can play and do things and be stimulated. Another important thing for children is to have a very good relationship with them, so that whenever, especially with teenagers, so that if they do get into something that is negative, that they will open up and talk with you about it. My wife is a tutor, and she tutors different children in the community. And she was tutoring this teenage boy. And he had the symptoms that I was talking about before. He had the glazed eyes, he was slouched, he was despondent. My wife wasn't sure what was going on, but the parents knew that something was wrong. And so they prayed. And I believe they prayed in faith. And after a while, one evening, they were in the living room visiting and talking, and all of a sudden the boy opened up just on his own. They didn't even ask. He just opened up, and so he had gotten a phone, and he'd been doing his schoolwork on his own in his own room, and he came across some games, and he started playing the games, and then one thing led to another, Eventually, he's buying things like upgrades and things like that with his phone, somehow had access to his bank account, online account. His parents weren't aware of these things. Parents, they took action. We know these people. They're friends of ours. They're not careless parents. And they took measures, locked down a few things, made sure he spent more time with the family. And he had to show that he was responsible and trustworthy. But the most important thing that I get from that is the fact that that boy, just on his own, sitting there in the living room, opened up and talked to his parents. And I think it's so important when this whole issue of technology, that we have the kind of relationship where our children will come talk to us about issues. There have been times where we have had children come and do that to us. They've opened up and said, hey, Dad, need help with this. Then there have been times whenever maybe they should have. So we haven't gotten it perfectly, but it's something we all must work for as much as possible. A few practical suggestions then you can take in your home. Number one, turn off all notifications on your phone except for the very important loved ones in your life. Remove all toxic apps. That would be Facebook. Remove TikTok. And of course, don't use YouTube Shorts. Remove Snapchat and Instagram. And if you think this is radical, I just want to tell you that these are recommendations from Tristan Harris, who founded the Center for Humane Technology, and he is not a Christian, and he used to work for Facebook. And now he works full-time trying to help people deal with technology issues. He's the one that quit working for Facebook because of what he thought was unethical practices by the company. And I think if a man like that gives these recommendations, well, what should we do? There are also other tools you can do to help you. You can use controls for screen time, for your children. Just want to say this, when you introduce a phone to your child, that's a very, very important time. And I went to our IT fellas at work years ago and I said, what should I do? A flip phone, smartphone? They said, actually, you can control a smartphone better than a flip phone. He gave me some guidelines, what I can do so that when the child first uses it, it's for calling and texting. And we also had maps on there and a couple of other things. But then you lock it down where they cannot install apps. And so therefore they cannot install a browser. And so therefore they can't go to all these different places, but yet they still have access to the things that they need. And then slowly open it up one step after another as they show that they are trustworthy and they become more mature. You can also do things like, the phone shuts down after a certain amount of time. Another thing that a lot of families do is no devices in the bedrooms whatsoever, even mom and dad. You use your phone for a lot of people use their phone for an alarm clock. You can get a regular alarm clock. I have one in my room. They still sell them at Walmart. Have a family charging station. My sister did that, started that years ago. I thought it was a wonderful idea. I don't know why I didn't start it sooner. You have a family charging station. All the phones go there. They get plugged in there, and that's where they are. They don't go into everybody's room where people then spend time in the evening doing whatever. You can adjust the blue light on your screen so that it is not shining in your eyes late at night and keeping you from sleeping. Have device-free meals and many other things. Swap video games for board games and swap all digital babysitters for humans. I got that one from Brad Huddleston. I'll just close here with a couple of men that you can go to if you want to learn more about this subject. One is Harry Argo. He is an Anabaptist brother from the United States that has several topics on this theme. Brad Huddleston, he lives in Virginia and has some good content as well. We've had both these men at Christian Light sharing their concerns and different things we can do to try and alleviate the challenges that children face these days. I want to close with James chapter 5, verse 16. For anyone that might be listening to this and you feel convicted that you need to do something in your life on this subject, it says in James, confess your sins one to another that you may be healed. A lot of these bondages are so strong that sometimes we need help. And there's a wonderful power that comes from confession, and that is that it removes the secrecy of it, especially if a man is in something that is shameful like pornography. Confession is a tremendously powerful way to reduce the power of the enemy. And it also brings healing. It says here, confess your sins to one another that you may be healed. And so I was talking about the brain scans. The brains, it literally changes the brain. But the good news is that if you stop using technology in a negative way, the brain begins to heal. And it actually heals a lot faster than what you would think. And depending on how long you've been using the technology in the wrong way and how aggressively you've been using it, it will determine how long it takes for your brain to heal. God bless you.
Thanks for your labor in that, brother. That was really good to hear. And I just think of, some of the things that our brother mentioned there, especially in the end, in James, about confession. It doesn't have to be done up here in front of the whole congregation. I wouldn't discourage that, but don't let fear trap you in that. The desire to get free from it is a good desire, and we would encourage that. You can come talk to John, me, any of the deacons, or even just someone you trust that you know is that can help you. It's what Ben talked about is very real. I remember the YouTube shorts. I had the same problem, and I was trying to figure it out what was going on because I couldn't stop watching them. And I came to the realization that having done a little bit of research, that this was the absolute perfect recipe for my particular attention span, which was very short. I can't watch a 15-minute video. It's very hard. But you make that thing 15 or less than 30 seconds, I can watch half hour of 30-second videos. But I can't watch one 15-minute video. And isn't that ironic? So what Ben is saying there is very real. And I just think there's a lot of things he didn't mention. Like, I know there's people in here with Netflix accounts. Let me tell you, there's one thing that's worth watching on Netflix, and that's The Social Dilemma. You watch that documentary. It's only available on Netflix. I have not been able to find it anywhere else. If you're wondering where I watched it, my wife and I rented a motel room that had Netflix, and I'm like, we're watching that because I won't have access to it anywhere else. But that is a documentary put on by the creators of Facebook, Instagram, and all these, and they've kind of banded together, and they're sounding the alarm exactly the same way Ben just said. They're saying, get off of these things. Like, we left. They said themselves that they were addicted. This isn't a joke. You think you can do it. And I know, coming from me, a lot of you are probably thinking, well, you're anti-social everything anyway. It's because I know. And it's no joke. It's very, very liberating to be free from that.
Amen.
And not to have to be worried about what somebody else thinks about what you're doing. And I mean that in a positive way. Your self-esteem, like Ben said, your self-esteem was not designed to be scrutinized by 10 or 15,000 people, much less the whole world. So, yeah, this is something real. As we go away from here, let's let's take it to heart. Let's not walk away from here thinking, you know what, that was really good, but I've got it under control. Ask yourself, do you really? Do you really? What if there's that small chance? What if? What if you're wrong and you don't have it under control? Just ask yourself that question and really, really examine it. How would your life change if you were to get rid of everything? And I'm not saying you have to get rid of everything. As a church, we've been very hands-off in what we've asked from all of you, and in how you raise your children. I think a lot of those things that Ben was saying, we have taken those things into practice for our children. And sometimes it's been hard because, you know, our children see their friends, they don't have the restrictions that they do. But I have had my children come back to me and thank me for that. It's very real. It's not a joke. And we need to protect our children. We need all the freedoms and the things that we enjoy in this congregation. We want that to continue. But we need to all be diligent. We aren't going to correct years of bad parenting with one day in every 7. Sunday mornings will not correct a whole week of really bad diets. You can't go and eat fast food and horrible food all day, every day, and then pick one day and eat a salad. It's just not going to work out. So there's, and I have a question. A few years ago, I think it's been years ago now, since you posted that the thing on music by is it Christian Berdal?
Yeah.
That's called the
Distraction dilemma.
You know, you don't have to put up your hand, but I want you to think about it. Which one of us all listened to it? I listened to it and I was amazed. And I took the information from that and I applied it to my life. And I think about this evening, you know, we've been given a lot of good information. And what are we going to do with it? It's our choice. Nobody's going to make us do anything. But there's tremendous blessings here. And all of this, all of the things that Ben brought out, I pretty much all of them, I don't think came from believers. Is that correct, brother? Most of that was just secular.
I would say 2/3.
About 2/3. So, you know, these are people that understand what's going on. And they're not even looking at a scope from a godly perspective, which amplifies the problem. So, yeah, with that, I think I'll close, but I just want to encourage all of us. Let's make sure that we take the treasure that we've been given and all those and what our brother has shared with us and the things that we can do. And children, youth, be patient with your parents. If they're trying to do what's right, be patient with them. Your parents have your best interest in mind. It might not seem that way to you right now, but one day you'll understand. And there's just nothing that I can say or do up here that will help some of you youth understand. I was a youth once, and I know what it's like to think the way that you do. And I've come to the realization that all I can do is tell you, and it's up to you to do something with that. So I would just encourage you to be patient with your parents as they try to, if they are trying to implement some of these things and whatever, be patient with them. And remember, it's for your good. So, That's all I have. Let's close in a word of prayer. Precious Lord, we come before you this evening. Lord, there's a lot here that's been given us this evening. Lord, we want to take it and apply it. Lord, we want it to be seed that fell on good soil. We want it to bring forth 100-fold. Lord, I pray that it would work that in all of our hearts. Lord, I pray that you would give us grace, give us wisdom. Lord, just direct us forward in all these things and all the different places that each one of us are at. Lord, that we can grow in grace and strength. Lord, that we can grow in wisdom of you, and that desire for you would stay strong in all of our hearts through all these things, Lord. I just pray that you would bless each one of us with a good night. Bless Brother Ben here for his labors. Keep him safe as he travels. Lord, we thank you for your goodness. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. You're all dismissed.